in the whole script, 3 letters. We changed ERP to SAP. Value is the same. We do the same thing. The metrics we get are the same. As saying we integrate to over 200 ERP, we can do this for any ERP. Just changing ERP to SAP and making it relevant to their business model, we had triple the appointment outcomes than we'd had in any other campaign. So message can have a huge impact. Personnel, we have to evaluate our team. Who on our team is having the most success? Is one person struggling with an objection where another person isn't? Is my team as a whole struggling with a certain objection that if we train a little bit more on that, we can improve their effectiveness? And then cadence. How many times do I really need to call? Why make 8 calls if I get 95% of my results in 2? And not only where do I get the most results, but where do I get the best results? And I'll show you a report that helps understand that in just a second. So within LeadJen, we do use multiple channels. We use email, we use voicemail. We've found that 20% of our appointments come from someone calling us back. So if you're ever in sales and you're getting into that environment, just know that voicemail does work. If I attempt someone 12 times and I never leave a voicemail and I reach them on the 13th attempt, they don't know that I've tried to call them 12 times. To them, it's the first attempt. Versus if I've been polite and I've been persistent and professional, when I really do get them live, I'm probably going to get a little bit of their time, which is very helpful. So how do we get there with our clients? How do we help them get up the curve, and where do they start? These are things to look at, and I know some of the language, I tend to use a lot of acronyms and all of that, so just please let it wash over you a little, because it is really valuable information. In any B2B or B2C environment, a lot of these techniques and ideas can be put into practice very quickly. And it's something that I feel could give you an edge if you walk in the door with some of these ideas. So how do we get there? First and foremost, data. I'll talk about that in just a second in terms of why that's so valuable. The message, how are we going to go about building that message? So when I'm looking at building a campaign, this is what the timeline and basically continuum we work on with our clients. Where are we starting with data? Who are we going to target? And what are we going to say to them? I'm going to create a cadence for how many times I'm going to attempt them so I can measure that cadence, because that's really important. If I have one person that calls 3 times a day, another person that calls every 3 weeks, it's very hard for me to start to understand what's working for who and why. Capture information. I guess my battery's not working here. Can I turn this on and see if this helps? Yes, there we go. So capture information. Make sure that you're capturing information about what's working. And so for our team, we talk about if you're getting a no, don't walk away with just a no. And it's not all about just pushing that person on the phone as much as it is, what can I understand about them that'll help me make this more relevant to them the next time I try to reach them? Because in business to business especially, I'm going to try to reach people multiple times. Just because they told me no 6 months ago doesn't mean that they're still not going to have an interest 6 months from now. So I've got to keep going back to people and seeing where their interest lies. And then try to impact those big 4 things that we talked about based on the information we're capturing. So data, why is it so important? This is a calling cadence that I've highlighted here. So you can see that in terms of the attempts, this is the progression that we go through within LeadJen. When our team receives a new list of people that we need to go after on behalf of our clients, the first step is they're going to send an email and they're going to call that day. Same day that the first email is sent. No one wants to hear from me if that doesn't happen, because it's just a waste of an email. Unless I'm doing that for a marketing campaign where I don't plan to follow up. If I plan to call that person, I better call them that day or within hours of sending it, because email has such a short shelf life. So then we're going to, after we do that, we're going to start a cadence. We call it the out of business day rule. So I'm going to wait a day and I'm going to call again. I'm going to wait 2 days and call again. I'm going to wait 3 days and call again. So we have a couple interactions close together near the start of the campaign, and we start to space things out over time so we're not browbeating people into appointments, because our clients don't want those appointments either. Now what's interesting about this with data, if I'm calling there's an issue with data accuracy and data relevance. Okay, so accuracy if on my first attempt, we're getting ready to publish a report that shows that of our campaigns, the campaigns where we did research, Megan Coots joined me today and she's on our research team. It's a group of people that help find the right people and the right companies. So we're calling all the right people, which helps make it more relevant. That was important to me to learn about that role in inside sales is I'm going to call the right people. I'm going to make this relevant to them. I'm not just going to waste my time calling people that this won't matter to. So let's get the right people in the right companies. If we're calling from a list that our clients provided us, that they just bought, 30% of those first attempts, so if I make 10 calls, 3 of those 10 are going to be totally wasted because they're going to not be there anymore. The company's in bankruptcy or a variety of factors, not just completely irrelevant to the role. So that's costly, right? Because I've wasted the time. I've wasted 30% of my time. There's costs associated with that. If I wait, and let's say I have a relevancy issue, maybe I just don't have the right people in the right companies, well, I might not find that out until 4 calls into the campaign. So now, I don't find out that I'm not even calling someone who's in marketing. I'm calling someone who's in IT. And I've had to attempt them 4 times to find out that they're not even the right person. Now that starts to escalate and that gets really, really costly in terms of data. So whenever you're involved in marketing or sales with any of the companies, that's a really important question to ask. And I often say that it's not sexy. No one wants to talk about it. No one wants to talk about data. No one wants to spend money on data. Clients come to us, they just say, get on the phones. I want all your time used calling and representing our brand. Well, if I'm calling all the wrong people, how is that going to help you reach your goal? So data is very, very important. A couple things with messaging and to think about here. Now, messaging was really important to me to better understand because, again, I had all of these pent-up concerns about being in sales and in inside sales and how I was contacting people and how relevant it was. There were some things that I found could make it really, really relevant and easy to do. Sorry, too close to that again. First of all, being a witness, I'm just going to skip down A/B testing. I'm just going to skip that. We'll talk about that later. But one of the most important things to me was being a witness, that instead of calling people in sales and telling them what they should do and going to Megan and saying, Megan, you should, let's give an example. This is a very non-PC example, so I apologize. But let's say I have a belief. I believe very strongly in it. And I approach Megan and I say, Megan, you should believe what I believe because you have these problems in your life. And if you believe what I believe, you won't have these problems anymore. Megan's probably going to, not talk to me ever again. And, but many times when I use that example, even with our clients, their body position changes. They cross their arms, they sit back, they crease their forehead. If I approach Megan and I say, well, I believe these things, and I had these problems in my life, and a few of my friends had these problems in their lives, and noticed that those things went away when we started believing these things. I'm not telling Megan what she should believe. I'm not pushing my opinions onto her. And I guess that's something that we found as a business, and I found I could do more effectively, that instead of calling someone and trying to understand what their problems are in a cold call, when they don't expect my call, they didn't ask for my call, why am I going to tell them their problems? I could talk about some other people like them. So other businesses like Bank of America that we had done this huge deal with. And I could talk about the challenges that Bank of America faced. So I could call them and say, I understand you're a chief marketing officer. We work with other CMOs and companies like Bank of America and Fifth Third and Merrill Lynch who had challenges because they weren't able to aggregate together their global marketing plans. They weren't able to localize their content to different geographies. And they needed a better way to handle that as a business. By working with a Primo, they're able to reduce their cycle time for their marketing campaign launches by 30%, and they were able to cut their costs by 50%. I'd love to set up a time and see if we can talk about how we were able to help them with that. I'm not pushing my opinions on them. I'm not telling them what they should think. I'm allowing them to associate to the pain of others and then giving them a trigger for some potential benefit. And honestly, it worked a lot better than me trying to guess what their problems were and align our huge, massive product to what their pain might be. It just wasn't going to happen. So people at the end of the day were interested in what other people like them were doing. So we were able to leverage that. We're also very able to work through those scary objections that you face on the phone, right? And some funny ones. I really like this one. That's my favorite. But these are some common things that we hear, and our clients like to think that their products are always completely different and their objections are always different, but at the end of the day, we're hearing a lot of the same things. I'm not interested, or we already have something like this in place. That ERP example is a great example. We already have an ERP. That's great. Actually, many of the clients we work with have an ERP solution in place. What we found is that we can actually leverage that technology and provide some additional value in these ways. So being able to coach our team on some very professional ways to deal with those objections is a fundamental part of our business. And I have a lot of fun examples of those if anyone's ever interested in hearing more. This calling cadence we talked through just a little bit, so I'm going to skip through this. But what we found as a business in terms of technology, and we actually spun out a technology company called Jasubi, is one of the challenges that we had in those CRM systems, that word you're going to look up later, is that they just didn't help us understand what was working when, because they weren't designed for people doing a lot of calling. They were designed for managing the sales forecast and those big deals, but there are only 20 of those and there are thousands of calls happening. So how do we get knowledge out of the calls? Well, what we were able to do is start to categorize our call outcomes so that we could go back and we could look at percentages. And so how that shakes out, make sure this is, yeah. So this is one of the reports that we're able to use and leverage. Now we're looking at this in the context of 2 individuals that were working on our calling team. For one project. And what we're able to find is that Ben was a newer employee, and he started on the project, and within a couple days of him starting on the project, we're able to look at some results to say not only how many conversations, so this is a lot of data, but up there you can see total conversations, 358. I'm going to come back here because I can barely see it. We called 251 people in 250 companies, and we got 19 appointments during that time period, which I think was a month there. Of that, who had the most success in terms of getting the appointment outcomes? Well, Matt had 11% and Ben had 2% conversion. Okay, so what we're able to do is work with Ben to understand, because Ben actually had the majority of the conversations, if you see there. Of the 358, he had 220, I can't tell the number there. So he had more conversations than anyone else to only get 2% response. So we've got to fix that pretty quick, and we can jump on it day one. Now this same data in terms of conversion gets really interesting and exciting in the context of, do I have a higher percentage conversion in pharmaceuticals or in financial services? Do I have a higher percentage conversion targeting a chief financial officer or a chief marketing officer? And maybe I can do that testing with my message. Maybe I'm not sure. Maybe I'm launching a new product. So I want to see how our new product message, how the response rate compares there versus our original message. Do we have an improved message with this new product release and some of the new values that we're going to share associated with it? The other thing that I talked a little bit about was that calling cadence. So this is really hard to see, so I'm going to call your attention down here. But basically breaking down that cadence and being able to see now, how many total leads did we target in this cadence? Well, here you can see we targeted, there were 3,534 people that made it into call 1. You can see how that starts to drop off over time. By call 6, there were 1,000 people that we attempted. There are 25% of those people that we called in call 1 we talked with, so we had 899 conversations. 6% of those converted to an appointment, so we had 52 appointments. If you can see, I'm curious about that connect percentage and the conversion, and it grows 30% to 5%, and here it drops off a little bit, but out at call 6, I still have 6% conversion. Now it's a much smaller volume because I'm starting with a smaller volume. So the question then is, I still have high conversion. Maybe I still want to make that call, but before I decide that, let me see if those 7 appointments have moved anywhere in our sales forecast. Let me see if those are good appointments before I just determine that it's worth it to make those calls. So the reason I share this, and it may or may not be a lot, I'm not sure. I can't quite get a read on the faces, but this is what took that, inside sales fear that I had, and allowed me to see how I could have a very significant impact on other businesses. And I was able to take that thing that really, at the worst case level, I'm taking this position, and I might, in my head, look for other things, but I'm going to get the most out of it while I'm there. And there are some things that I think are important to consider, when